Let me tell you a story. A story of faith, leadership, and a miracle that shook the land of Egypt. It's a story about how a mighty river stopped flowing and how one letter from Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu changed its course forever. This is not just a tale of history, it is a lesson in trust, justice, and the power of true leadership. Many years ago, during the caliphate of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, Egypt faced a terrifying crisis. The river Nile, the lifeline of the land, had stopped flowing. The people were afraid. Without water, their crops would die, their animals would perish, and famine would consume the land. For generations, the people believed the Nile had a ritual. Each year, they sacrificed a young girl, believing only then would the river flow again. And now, the time for the sacrifice had come. Egyptian elder: "O governor, without the sacrifice, the Nile will not flow. Give us permission, or our people will starve." But Hazrat Amr ibn al-As, the governor of Egypt, was a companion of the Prophet. He knew Islam had come to end such cruel practices. Hazrat Amr ibn al-As firmly: "No, Islam forbids such injustice. The river does not flow because of sacrifice. It flows by the command of Allah." The people were confused. If the sacrifice was stopped, what would happen to their land? Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu receives the letter. He reads it carefully, his expression serious and thoughtful. When Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu read the letter, he did not hesitate. He knew that rivers do not flow by human sacrifice, but by the will of Allah. So, he picked up a small parchment and wrote another letter, not to the people, but to the river Nile itself. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, writing, "From the servant of Allah, Umar ibn al-Khattab, to the river Nile of Egypt, if you flow by your own will, then we do not need you. But if you flow by the command of Allah, the one and only, then we pray to him to make you flow again." He seals the letter and sends it to Egypt with his messenger. The people of Egypt were waiting. Would the Nile remain dry? Would their land be doomed? Hazrat Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu held the letter high, recited it loudly, and then threw it into the still river. The power of Allah was witnessed that day. No sacrifice was needed, only faith. The Nile, which had remained still, began flowing once again. And from that day onward, it never required another sacrifice. Through the wisdom of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, a nation was saved from ignorance. He proved that rivers do not flow by human hands, but by the power of Allah alone. Leadership is not about ruling with fear. It is about guiding with truth and justice. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu's legacy remains an inspiration for the world. If this story inspired you, share it with others. Let the world remember what true leadership looks like.